Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I have my June wrap up to do today. I read 17 books last month. I didn't read quite as much as I usually do, but it was such a hectic month. Honestly, I've barely been reading for June and July, so if anyone has any recs that they've read recently and loved, please let me know. And if they're shorter reads, even better. But let's just jump into what I read last month. I had a couple new favorites of the year. I read a bunch of new to me authors that I loved. So still a great reading month for me. And the first book that I read back in June was Love Theoretically by Hazelwood. This is one of my new favorites of the year. I give it 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. It was so much fun to read, and it's perfect for anyone who loved the love hypothesis and Love on the Brain, because it does follow that familiar formula of a STEM romance from Hazelwood. They both work in STEM. There's some enemies to lovers vibes, but you can tell how much the hero actually likes the heroine. So I loved Elsie and Jack and their enemies to lovers romance. Elsie is a theoretical physicist who works as an adjunct professor, which means that she barely makes any money. So she does have a side job as a fake girlfriend for hire. Her latest and favorite client is Greg, who is not the hero. The hero is actually Greg's arrogant older brother, Jack, who Elsie is not a fan of. So the reason why it's an enemies to lovers romance and the reason why Elsie hates Jack is because he's actually the physicist who ruined her mentor's career. He is an experimental physicist who made theoretical physicists a complete joke. So there's lots of fun banter between Jack and Elsie. The enemies part was done well, and I can never not love a good pining hero. Because yes, Jack does want his beloved brother's girlfriend, which makes him hate himself, but he just doesn't know about the fake part. So you can feel a little bit of that torment here, which is great. But I gotta say, Jack is definitely Hazelwood's most forward and confident hero so far. Like, he is not a shy boy like Adam and Levi. As much as I love them, it was nice to read about a different kind of hero too. He is a hero who speaks his mind, and I loved him for it. So this was another wonderful STEM romance from Hazelwood. I had the best time reading it. I mean, it still doesn't top the love hypothesis for me, but I still loved it. For my next book, Love Theoretically was not the only Hazelwood book that I read last month, because I read a little book called Head Over Feet. This is the original fanfic that eventually turned into the love hypothesis. So this one is the original, where the names are Ben Solo and Ray, because it is a Raylo fanfic. Honestly, the story between this and the love hypothesis is pretty much exactly the same, except in the original we don't have the storyline with Adam's best friend being awful. And then the prologue in the love hypothesis, which is one of my favorite prologues ever, that scene didn't happen until way later in Head Over Feet. But I'm really glad that the published version put that scene at the very beginning, because it really sets up why and how Adam fell for Olive, or how Ben fell for Ray. The one thing that I liked more about this fanfic though is that we do have a ton of the hero's point of view. In the love hypothesis, it's completely told from Olive's point of view, but in Head Over Feet, we do get Ben's point of view. It's mostly in the second half of Head Over Feet, but if you've ever wanted more of Adam and his point of view, then you definitely need to read Head Over Feet. But I really like this one. I give it 4 stars. It wasn't quite the 5-star read that the love hypothesis was, because it was still a little weird to read a fanfic. I've never really read any. I never got into reading any fanfic. I had no interest in it until now, but it wasn't bad. It was just a little weird with the names, but since I'm not really into Star Wars, I don't know much about it. Seeing all the names from Star Wars didn't take me that much out of the story, but having read this, I can definitely see why Allie got picked up by a publisher, because it was still a solid romance, and thanks to some publisher help, it turned out to be an even better published book. And then I read Liz Tomforde for the very first time. I read Mile High, which I gave 4 stars to. It's a sports romance. We have a hockey player hero and a flight attendant heroine. So Xander's is a hockey player. He plays in Chicago, and he's known as a player on and off the ice. For the new season, his team is using this new private plane, and the heroine is one of the flight attendants there. But the thing about Stevie is that she could not care less about who or what Xander's is, so she's less than impressed by him, and because of this, Xander's kind of makes her life hell. He is very annoying, very rude during these flights, so I was not his biggest fan in the beginning of this book. It started out rough for me just because I don't like heroes who are annoying for no good reason. So at first, the only scenes that they have together are on these flights, but once they move past that is when the romance started to get a little bit better for me. Things get hot and heavy quickly when Xander's and Stevie start hooking up, and I loved how this was the very first time that Xander's wanted more from a woman than just hookups, and she says no. She humbles him, so obviously I loved Stevie's character. She is strong and independent, but she also has flaws that make her very relatable and very real. Also, if you like forbidden romances, there is an element of forbiddenness here, just because there's a no fraternization policy between players and flight attendants. If they get caught, she'll lose her job. But yeah, these two were hot together. I loved how Xander's fell first. He fell hard and fast. For my first Liz Tomforde book, it was great. I really liked her writing. I liked her characters, though I will say there were some parts that felt a little long. It's a pretty long book, but I can see why people are loving her books now. And then I have another new favorite of the year, which is My Dark Romeo by L.J. Shen and Parker S. Huntington. This is kind of a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but not really. We do have a hero named Romeo. There's a bit of that poisoning stuff, but it's a marriage of convenience romance, and it was fantastic. I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was so funny. Like, I actually had the best time reading it. So this is a first time author collab between L.J. Shen and Parker S. Huntington, and I thought they did a really good job together. I love the characters, especially the heroine, and I loved how entertaining everything was. It's an enemies to lovers, forced marriage of convenience romance between Dallas and Romeo. They both come from money. They are very, very wealthy. He hates her though because she's engaged to his biggest rival. So in revenge against that rival, Romeo ruins Dallas's reputation in front of everyone at this party. This forces her hand in marriage. She marries Romeo instead of her fiance, and she hates him for it and makes his life miserable because of it. This book almost has a historical romance vibe to it, with the whole backwards and traditional way of a young woman's reputation, at least when it comes to people in this category of wealth, the 1%ers, where Dallas is forced to marry someone she doesn't know or doesn't like to save her reputation and her family's reputation. Anyway, these two get married even though they can't stand each other. There's all this crazy and hilarious banter between them, which I loved, and it was so funny how Dallas pretty much racked up like $1 million charge on Romeo's credit card because she was so pissed at him. The book surprisingly was a little bit slow burn, which I didn't expect, but I kind of loved it. I loved the slower pace. I loved how things played out between these two. Dallas was living my dream of being a trophy wife who could eat whatever she wanted, wherever she wanted, and getting to spend as much of her husband's money as she wanted. So that was fun to read, and I also loved how Romeo was not a man whore. He is not a player. He was celibate for a pretty long time before Dallas, but he's just, you know, an asshole, a grumpy asshole. I also loved his two best friends, who I am praying get their own romances because they are so funny and I need more of them. So this was an unexpected collab, but I ended up loving it. I then read 2 Lauren Asher books last month. I read more of her Dirty Air series, which is her Formula One racing sports romance series. So I read Collided, which is book 2, and I like this one a little bit more than book 1. I gave it 3.5 stars, but only because I am a sucker for friends to lovers romances. And this is the kind of friends to lovers where you get to see that friendship develop within the book. I was actually going to give this one 4 stars, but then when I was thinking about it for this wrap up, I could barely remember what happened. It was a very not memorable book, so I did mark it down a little bit, but I at least enjoyed it while I was reading it. That's what I can remember. Anyway, the hero Liam is an F1 racer, and he's known as the popular golden boy of the industry. He's known Sophie for years and always wanted her, but with her being the daughter of a man who works at Liam's rival's team, it's a little forbidden between them. But then one day Liam sees Sophie's bucket list and he wants to help her complete it, which I thought was the cutest premise ever. This is when they really start to develop their wonderful friendship, all while trying to keep lust and feelings out of it. You can tell how much these two want each other, like they want each other badly, but they try to not muck things up between them, but you can predict how things go. The romance is very predictable. You know that once feelings are involved, someone is gonna get hurt, but it was still a cute read. I didn't find Liam as annoying as the hero from the first book. I love the whole bucket list challenge thing. The friendship was great, so it was a cute read. And then the other Lauren Asher book that I read was Wrecked, which is book 3 in the Dirty Air series. Unfortunately, this third book didn't really impress me much. I give it 3 stars. It's the classic kind of romance where the heroine is the hired PR rep who's gonna watch over the hero, babysit him 24/7 to make sure he doesn't ruin even more of his reputation. Jax is a hero this time. Each hero in the series has his own sort of reputation in the F1 world, and Jax has this partying bad boy reputation. He uses drugs, alcohol, women to numb the pain of knowing his mom has Huntington's and him not knowing if he has the genes for it. When he screws things up majorly, this is when Elena comes in. She's his new babysitter, and the two of them hate that they have to be around each other so much. There's a ton of forced proximity, and kind of like book 2, there is some good banter, but I just couldn't stand Jax's character here. He was a dick for most of this book. I never grew to love him or care about him. I mean, I still empathized with his situation, but he just treated Elena terribly so many times. Luckily, she is the kind of heroine who can stand up for herself, but still. Elena is really the reason why I didn't rate this one lower, but I'm still sad that I didn't enjoy this one more. I'm sad that I don't love the series more in general. I mean, it's a freaking F1 romance series. Racing isn't as popular of a sports to read about, but I still love it when I see it. But for a series that has some hot race car drivers, it's been a little underwhelming. 3.5 is the highest rating that I've given so far, but I'm still holding out hope for book 4. I really hope that I love it. And then I read Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. I heard a lot of good things about this one, so I thought I would love it, but it ended up being so boring. I barely connected with the hero or heroine, though I did really love the hero's younger brother, but the romance was just nothing special for me, so I give it 3 stars. I've also come to realize that I absolutely hate when a hero starts off as a jerk, as a huge dick for absolutely no reason. Warren was straight up so rude to Chloe during their first meeting, even though she was helping him out. So I was annoyed from the get-go here, which sucks because the premise of this one was very unique. It sounded very interesting. The heroine Chloe discovers that she has a newborn baby sister and her mom is not gonna take care of the baby. So Chloe gains guardianship of her sister, but only if she can team up with another person in the same sort of situation. Warren has a deaf teenage brother that he's taking care of, but he needs housing in order to do so. Chloe has a house, but she needs money to take care of her sister. Warren has money, but he needs a house. So the two team up. It's very reluctant though, especially on Warren's part, but they do work together to help their siblings. We have the roommates to lovers trope, but the romance was just very okay. I wasn't feeling that much for them, though I did appreciate their love for their siblings. So for me, the book was fun in theory, but it just wasn't executed as well as I hoped it would. My next read is another hockey romance. I read a couple hockey romances for June, which I made a little video about. So if you watched that, you probably already heard me talking about Pucking Around by Emily Rath. This is a why choose reverse harem hockey romance that is 750 pages long. Despite this terrible length though, I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. The heroine Rachel is a physical therapist who gets hired on this new Florida NHL team. She has 3 heroes. The first one is Jake, who she actually had this amazing one night with months ago, but never got his number after that. He's now one of the hockey players that she is treating, so things are forbidden between them. The second hero is Caleb, who is Jake's best friend. Caleb is openly bi, and he actually has a crush on his best friend while he's falling for Rachel, so there is some action going on here. And the third hero is my favorite. It's Mars, who is another hockey player. He's the Finnish goalie who is giant and quiet and just adores Rachel so much. It was my first time reading this author, and I had a blast reading it. I loved all these characters. The steam was crazy hot. There is a ton of it. I mean, it's 750 pages, and there really is never a dull moment in this book. I thought there would be some parts that would drag in such a long book, but there weren't. There were some things that I wish could have been better, like more background with Rachel's character, some other things that could have been fleshed out more, but I still had a great time reading it. I love the romance, and I'm definitely going to be reading more from this author. I then read Exappeal by Kathy Yardley. This is book 3 in the Ponto Beach Reunion series, and it's a second chance romance. It's about the couple that has been teased throughout the series for their second chance. Sadly though, I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but I liked it enough. I gave it 3 stars. I do love a good hacker romance, and the heroine here is the hacker. She gets hired by her ex, her high school sweetheart, when he discovers, like, he works in finance and he discovers that he's missing $10 million in one of his accounts. And Vin knows that Emily is the only person who can help him find that money. The only reason Emily agrees though, because she is not his biggest fan after he dumped her when she needed him the most, is because she's struggling financially and could really use the money that Vin is gonna give her for this. So I love the whole hacking, sort of corporate espionage aspect of this book, but the second chance romance itself was only okay. I was hoping it would be more angsty, maybe have a little bit of groveling on Vin's side, but we didn't have that. The emotions weren't as strong as I wanted them to be. I could feel all the resentment between them, but not so much the new love. But it wasn't bad. I still liked some aspects of it. It's not, you know, a terrible installment in the series. It's just not my favorite. I also read a mafia romance book next. I read Shielded Wrongs by Adelaide Forrest. I've been continuing with reading all of Adelaide Forrest / Harper L. Wood's entire backlist because my library keeps getting her audiobooks. So this one is book 4 of the Bellani Crime Syndicate series, and it's a mafia bodyguard romance. Sadie is a kick-ass heroine who runs this boxing gym, but she needs a bodyguard when someone attacks her. Her best friend is married to the mafia boss, so she gets the head of mafia security to be her new bodyguard. Enzo is now her new protector, her new babysitter, even though she does not want one. If you've read Adelaide Forrest before, Enzo is pretty much as over the top, possessive, jealous, obsessive, and alpha as all of her other heroes. He pretty much steamrolls her into moving in with him so he can keep a close eye on her. Sadie hates this though. She knows how to defend herself. She is very strong, very independent, and she gives Enzo hell right back. She's probably the one heroine that I read so far from Adelaide Forrest who can truly stand up to her hero, which is saying something. Sadie also suffers from OCD and ADHD, which she does try to keep a secret, but this vulnerable part of herself is actually what helps her connect and bond with Enzo, who himself is suffering from PTSD. So because of all these things, I feel like this book is probably the most heartfelt of the series. It was definitely less mafia heavy than the earlier books, but I liked it. I enjoyed the romance. It's like a 3.5 to 4 stars for me. And then I read yet another hockey romance. I read Iced Out by C.E. Ritchie, which is an enemies to lovers hockey romance. She is another new to me author, but I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. The main characters are teammates on this college hockey team, but they hate each other. They both have their reasons why, but their hatred is definitely affecting their performance on the ice. They haven't won a game since the new season started, but then one night at a party they end up hooking up. Oakley is openly gay, whereas Quentin has never shown any interest in guys until now, but they hook up at this party, it gets crazy hot, and then the next day they end up winning their hockey game. This is when Oakley and Quinn realize that them hooking up is the key to winning games. It's their new superstition, so they have to hook up now. At first they try to keep it limited, like only the night before a game, but it just spirals out from there, especially when feelings get involved. It's a hot enemies with benefits relationship, but I absolutely adored how the enemies part slowly develops into something so sweet and genuine. The middle part did drag a bit for me though, just because there's nothing but them in bed together. The ending is predictable and cheesy, but I forgive it just because Quentin and Oakley are too cute together. So this is great. Highly recommend it if you're looking for an hockey romance. I then read Vacation Wars by Meghan Quinn. This one I was hoping to love just because it was exactly the beachy vacation read that I was in the mood for, but I just could not deal with the heroine, her sister, and their group of friends. All their antics and pranks were not very funny for a rom-com. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. The whole setup of this one is that Tessa is in Greece for her sister's destination wedding. Santorini is their family's favorite vacation spot, and this is the one year that Tessa finally gets the courage to talk to her yearly crush. Miles is the son of the owner of the resort that they're staying at, and he has a very difficult relationship with his father. He's trying to be a part of the family business, all while falling for Tessa. Their first meeting is so freaking awkward, or it's more like Tessa is unbelievably awkward when it comes to Miles and just spews the most random crap at him. So if you like that style of rom-com, like the quirky heroine, this might be for you. It was just a little bit too much for me, but in general, the romance was cute. It was fun. I really liked how sweet and silly Miles and Tessa were together, but it was Tessa and her girl group that brought this read down for me just because they were all so immature. All of their jokes and pranks felt ridiculous and not funny at all. Tessa's sister, the bride, was also having some major issues, so that was not enjoyable to read. So as much as I wish this could have been a great vacation romance, it was just okay. I give it 3 stars. I also read the new QB Tyler Keep Her Safe, which is a bodyguard romance. We have a celebrity actress heroine, her longtime bodyguard, who fall for each other, and it's another steamy forbidden romance from QB Tyler. Damien has been Shay's bodyguard for the last 5-ish years, and they've wanted each other since the very moment that they met, but Shay was either too young, she had a boyfriend, and you know, he's still her bodyguard, so things never happened between them until now when Shay discovers her boyfriend has been cheating on her for a long time, and she knows that now is finally the time for her to have Damien, the guy that she's always wanted. Like every other QB Tyler book, the steam is fire here. I know that whenever I'm in the mood for something angsty but hot, I can count on QB because she always delivers exactly what I'm craving. I loved Shay and Damien's chemistry. I loved how these two were longing for each other, pining for each other for so long. There's some suspense, a twist with Shay's stalker who Damien is trying to hunt down. Damien is just so protective over Shay. He was so good to her, like he really had me swooning. He's all alpha and possessive but so sweetly protective over her. So I adored these two. It's another great read from this author, and I give it 4 stars. I then read the newest Tessa Bailey book, Unfortunately Yours. This is the standalone sequel to Secretly Yours, which I adored, so I was looking forward to this one, and it ended up being a great read. I give it 4 stars. The heroine here is the sister of the hero from book 1. Natalie is a Napa heiress who's returned home, and she wants her inheritance in order to start her own business. The only way to get that trust fund though is to get married, and this is when the hero comes in. August runs this rundown vineyard thanks to his best friend. He wants to fulfill his late best friend's wishes, but he is so terrible at making wine, and plus he needs a lot of money to run this vineyard. She needs a husband, he needs money, so Natalie and August enter a marriage of convenience. They don't exactly get along though. There's a hint of enemies to lovers, even though they don't exactly hate each other. And honestly, a Tessa Bailey hero could never really hate his heroine anyway. They have to live together in order to pass off this marriage as real so she can get her inheritance. There's a lot of silly and fun banter here, and since this is a Tessa Bailey book, we have a hero who is extremely lusty over the heroine. I think this was Tessa Bailey's first marriage of convenience, and I thought she did it well. It's a little over the top, there are some funny moments, some great dirty talk, and I can never not love a hero who becomes a total simp for his woman. My next read was Be With Me by Samantha Young. I've been slowly making my way through the entire Adair series, and it's been so good. It's the perfect series if you love Scottish men, small towns, a family-oriented series, and some good mystery and suspense. Be With Me is book 4 in the Adair series. It's about the youngest Adair brother, and I give it 4 stars. It's Friends to Lovers, one of my favorites, and it is so sweet. The heroine Aradine works for the Ardnach estate, which is owned by the Adairs, by the hero's family. She works as a Pilates instructor, and she is friends with Aaron, even though they have this underlying chemistry between them. He's always wanted her though, so when they start up this friends with benefits situation, he is happy, but but also wants more. The only reason that they don't have more though is because of Aradine and her past. Both of them do have some broken pasts that they connect over, but Aaron is just so slow and good to Aradine. He knows that she is it for him, but he allows her to set the pace, at least until she finally says yes. So this is definitely a he falls first kind of situation. So I enjoyed their friends to lovers romance. The mystery here, it wasn't as strong as the other books in the series, but it's still there. One of my favorite things about this book is how it's a setup for the next book, the Last Brothers book. He's a Hollywood actor and he gets a sort of second chance with his childhood best friend slash crush. They're already so angsty and so good in this book, so I cannot wait to get to their own book. And then for my last few reads of June, I read A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows by Holly Renee. This was my book club's read for June. It's a fantasy romance, the first book in a new series, and I was not the biggest fan. I gave it 2 stars. It was just a bit too short for anything substantial, so there wasn't all that much world building, definitely no character development. The romance was more smut than plot, but hey, if that's what you're in the mood for and that's what you're looking for in a fantasy romance, then this probably would work better for you. It does have similar vibes to What Lies Beyond the Veil by Harper L. Woods and From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, so any sort of twist that this possibly could have had was very predictable. We have a forced marriage between a star-blessed human and a fae prince. What star-blessed means, I still have no idea because that's never explained. We don't get any backstory for these characters. We're just dumped into the middle of their story, with Adara not wanting to be forced into this marriage but also not doing anything about it to get out of it. Everything about this book was just not very unique or memorable, although I will say I will not be forgetting that library scene with the book anytime soon. I think this was also Holly Renee's first time writing a fantasy romance. I'm always curious when contemporary authors try writing fantasy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like in this case, it just wasn't a very good start to this series, and I most likely will not be continuing. And then the final book that I read in June was Jonna Goes Wild by Farrah Heron. I was very excited about this one because of how the premise sounded. It's a second chance romance where the main characters share custody of their child. They all go to a destination wedding in Tanzania at the Serengeti National Park. They get to see elephants and everything, and it was such a fun read. I loved feeling like I was at the Serengeti National Park, so the author did a great job with the setting here. The second chance romance was also good. I really enjoyed it. So the reason why they're in this sort of situation, sharing custody of their child, is because years ago, Jonna and Anil, they were actually in a relationship that was turning into something really serious, something more. But then Jonna finds out that Anil may be separated from his wife, but he's still not divorced. She breaks things off, but then she finds out she's pregnant, so they do the whole co-parenting thing. But of course, Jonna never forgives Anil for his lies. But I will say, honestly, Anil did have a good reason for still being married even though he didn't want to be. It was definitely more of the wife, the ex-wife's problem, but it's definitely still understandable why Jonna was so hurt and so mad because of it. So fast forward a couple years later, they have a great daughter and they finally get their second chance at a destination wedding. It is so clear how Anil has never gotten over Jonna and is still pining after her. Their second chance romance is slow and sweet. Jonna has a lot of other issues outside of the romance that she has to deal with, especially like career-wise. But overall, I liked how things played out here. If you're looking for a second chance romance that's a little bit different than your typical one, I say definitely try this one because I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And that is it for my June wrap up. Those were all the books that I read last month. Let me know your thoughts if you've read any of these same books. As always, links to everything will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!